Assalamu alaikum dear students. So previously we have studied what are van der Waals forces, their types. We have studied two types. First was London forces. We studied their characteristics, we studied the properties, we studied the impact, and we studied the consequences. Then after that we took the dipole-dipole interactions, and in dipole-dipole interactions we studied with the help of an explanation. Then we moved to characteristics and finally the consequences. As far as today's topic is concerned, it is the third type of van der Waals forces. It is dipole-induced dipole interactions. As the name indicates, we must have a presence of, that means it is the interaction between dipole of one molecule and induced dipole of another molecule. Or we can say that it's an interaction between a polar molecule and a non-polar molecule. Since we studied last time that induced dipole interactions are present among non-polar molecules, so they are present among non-polar molecules, while as dipole interactions, they are present among polar molecules. The polar molecules must have a permanent dipole, and in addition to the presence of a permanent dipole, they must have a non-zero dipole moment. These features we have already studied. So dipole, these are present in polar molecules, all right, with a non-zero dipole moment, all right. So we can say, in short, we can say that dipole-induced dipole interactions, it's somewhat a sandwich, or it's a synthesis between dipole-dipole interactions and induced dipole interactions, right? So we can say that it's a sort of combination. Once we take induced dipole instantaneous dipole interactions or London forces into account and dipole-dipole interactions into account, it's a sort of synthesis between the two. So we can say dipole-induced dipole interactions, these are a synthesis between dipole-dipole interactions and London forces. In this, we have interaction between polar molecules with non-zero dipole moment that must have a permanent dipole, and the other molecules should be non-polar in nature. We will illustrate with this with the help of an example, right? So we can say dipole-induced dipole interactions. It is the third type of van der Waals forces of interaction between a polar molecule and a non-polar molecule. A polar molecule induces a dipole in the non-polar molecule. As a result, we have the interaction between a polar molecule and that of a non-polar molecule, and that sort of interaction is called dipole-induced dipole interaction. Or we can say it's a sandwich, or it's a synthesis between dipole-dipole type of interaction and instantaneous or induced dipole interactions, right? So taking the example into consideration, we will be able to understand it very properly, right? So if we take the example of, let us take the example of water. If we take, so let me magnify it so that it becomes clearly visible to all of the students who are watching it. So let's take the example of water, H2O, and let me take the example of argon. Alright, so it's a molecule. This molecule is polar in nature, right? It has a non-zero dipole moment. So the features of this water molecule is that it's a molecule which is polar in nature. That means it has a permanent dipole. It has a permanent dipole. It's a molecule which is polar in nature. It has a permanent dipole. In addition to the presence of permanent dipole, it also has a non-zero dipole moment. That means the dipoles don't cancel each other. As a result, this molecule is having some magnitude of dipole moment. Now, if we take another substance which we take in combination with water, we have argon. It's a noble gas in atomic form, right? Noble gas in atomic form, and it's non-polar in nature. So we have taken two substances. First is water, which is a polar molecule. It has a permanent dipole. In fact, it has two dipoles, and it also has a non-zero dipole moment. That means water molecules, we will take a sample of water molecules. Those molecules will be associated through dipole-dipole interactions. Now, if we take water molecule like this is the water molecule, all right? So hydrogen being less electronegative as compared to that of oxygen, we have already studied it. So oxygen will drag the electron pairs towards itself. It will gain a partial negative charge. Hydrogens will gain a partial positive charge. So we have the creation of two dipoles, right? So these dipoles are present permanently in the water molecule. As a result, we can say whole of the water molecule is polar in nature. It has a permanent dipole, in fact two dipoles, and plus it has a non-zero dipole moment. That means these two dipoles are not exactly opposite to each other. They do not cancel each other. As a result, the water molecule as a whole has a non-zero dipole moment, right? Now, if we dissolve argon, if we have water sample and we try or we attempt to dissolve argon in water or any noble gas in water, we have to exert pressure, no doubt about that, but we have to remember that argon, it's in atomic form, it doesn't form compounds, it's a noble gas, it's in atomic form, plus it's non-polar. That means in atomic form, each argon atom will have a spherical distribution of electrons around the nucleus, right? So this is non-polar and this is polar, and it has been found that this is able, that means we can dissolve argon in water or any other polar solvent, be it alcohol or be it water. So what type of molecules or what type of substances we are interacting over here? We have a polar molecule and we have a non-polar substance. It may be a molecule as well. So we have taken, for instance, argon over here. Argon is non-polar, whereas water is polar. What happens when argon atoms, they enter the liquid phase of water? There occurs induction. That means this dipole induces a dipole in the argon atoms. Now, how it happens? So we can say in dipole-induced dipole interactions, we must have a polar molecule with a non-zero dipole moment and another substance which may be in atomic form or it may be in molecular form. It must be a non-polar. So this polar molecule induces a dipole in the non-polar molecule or non-polar atom, which leads to the interaction of dipole-induced dipole type interactions. So if we take these two substances like this now, if we take water molecule like this, which I have taken, if I take water like this has a delta negative charge, this has a delta positive, this has delta positive. So if we have helium atom over here, in presence of what we call this dipole, there occurs induction or there occurs asymmetrical distribution, which we have studied in London type of forces. There occurs asymmetrical distribution of electron distribution in the argon atoms. Remember, in the absence of electric field of this dipole, these argon atoms will have a spherical symmetrical electronic distribution around the nucleus. That means the center of positive and negative charges, they coincide. Now, once this water molecule approaches argon atoms, there occurs induction. That's why it's also called as induction effect. That means if you are being asked in the examination which type of forces is responsible for induction effect, and that is dipole-induced dipole interactions. So what happens over here? The centers of positive and negative charge of these argon atoms, they tend to separate from each other in presence of the dipoles of water molecules, or in presence of the electric field of water molecules. We have the asymmetrical distribution of electron charge in the non-polar helium or neon or argon atoms. So what happens over here? We have a partial negative positive charge over here. That means electron density will shift in this direction and the positive density will shift in the other direction. So what happens? In the earlier case, we had a symmetrical distribution of charge around the nucleus. Now we have an asymmetrical distribution of charge. This dipole was not present in the argon atoms in the absence of the field. However, whenever we have induced the field, we have brought the argon atoms in the field of water molecules, we have the induction of field. That means there occurs now we have created a dipole with a positive end and a negative end. So this dipole has been created by a molecule which has a permanent dipole. So we can say this is a temporary dipole, or we can say that it's an induced dipole. This induced dipole has come into existence in presence of a permanent dipole. Now these two substances, that means if we have this as argon atom and this as water molecule, now they will undergo interaction with each other, and that type of interaction is called as dipole induced dipole type of interactions. Now they will undergo interaction, right? So this will be called as dipole induced dipole interactions. So we have a polar substance with a permanent dipole, non-zero dipole moment, and a substance which is non-polar. It can undergo polarization. It can undergo polarization in presence of a dipole, and the simultaneous or the consequent result of interaction between the two, that will be called as dipole induced dipole type of interactions, right? So we can say, in nutshell, we can say we must have a molecule with non-zero dipole moment and the other molecule must be non-polar. As a result, we have the induction of forces. That type of forces are called dipole induced dipole type of interactions. This is called induction effect. Why? We have the induction of an induced dipole in presence of a permanent dipole, and hence this is called induction effect, right? Now after this we will study what are the characteristics, right? So this is all about dipole induced dipole interactions as far as the explanation is concerned. Polar molecule, non-polar molecule. Polar molecule induces a dipole in the non-polar molecule or substance. It had no dipole in the absence of the field. Now once it has come into the under the influence of a dipole or electric field, now the asymmetrical distribution of charge has come into existence. Once it has come into existence, we have the creation of a temporary dipole. Now this temporary dipole will undergo electrostatic interaction with what? It will undergo electrostatic interaction with what? With the permanent dipole of the polar molecule, and the consequent result is dipole induced dipole interactions. And after this we will study some of the few characteristics. In fact, there are not much characteristics, but we will as I have already told you that it is a sandwich, or it is a synthesis type of interaction between London and dipole-dipole interaction. So the characteristics will be somewhat matching between the two, right? So we will now write down what are the characteristics of dipole-induced dipole interactions, right? What are the characteristics? So the first is variation with distance. Variation with distance. The attractive energy over here, it falls off with the 6th power of distance of separation between the interacting molecules. That means if we had the water molecule over here, and we have the argon atom over here, the distance between the two should be very small for the interaction to be appreciable, for the interaction to be effective. What does that indicate? That means if we increase distance slightly, the forces of attraction between the two polar and non-polar substances, they will vanish. So interaction falls off. We have studied all this in London forces. We have studied this in dipole-dipole interactions. In London forces, we had the attractive energy variation that falls off with the 6th power of distance of separation between polar and non-polar substances. So the same is the case over here. Slightly their magnitude is higher than that of London forces, because London forces, we know they are present mostly among non-polar molecules, but these are present between polar and non-polar substances. So the magnitude is slightly higher than that of London forces, although the attractive energy variation is inversely with the 6th power of distance of separation between the two. So this is variation with distance. After this we have variation with polarizability. Variation with polarizability. polarizability. Now, as we have already told you, polarizability is the ease with which the electrons get distorted. Now, polarizability must be a feature of non-polar substance. So this is not a feature of polar substance. Remember, we have this type of interaction between a polar substance and that of a non-polar substance. So if we have a polar substance, it interacts with a non-polar substance. So greater the ease, this polar molecule will induce polarity in the non-polar substance. As we have right now shown over here, polar we have taken water, and here we have taken argon. This is non-polar and this is polar. This polar molecule brings about the induction or brings about the polarity in this non-polar molecule. So greater the ease with which this non-polar substance undergoes asymmetrical charge distribution or undergoes or brings about polarity in itself by the field created by polar substance, greater will be the electrostatic interactions or greater will be the induced dipole interactions between the two. But that is, we have already defined in the previous lecture, that is called polarizability. Polarizability we have discussed, मैंने आपको बोला है, we have already discussed it in the previous classes. Polarizability means ease with which the electrons of a non-polar atom, they undergo distortion or they undergo asymmetrical distribution. Now we will take an example. In this we will take an example. So greater the ease, greater will be the asymmetrical charge distribution. Once there occurs greater ease of asymmetrical charge distribution, greater will be the lifetime of the temporary dipole. Once greater is the lifetime of the temporary dipole, it will live for an appreciable amount of time, and that will lead to stronger force of attraction between the non-polar and the polar substance, right? We will take in terms of consequences, we will illustrate it with the help of the consequences on the solubility of noble gases in water or polar substances. So we can say greater is the ease with which the electrons, for example, if we have water molecule and if we have, say, a noble gas, right? We have positive charge and electrons is symmetrically distributed around the nucleus. Now, in presence of the field, now we have a dipole over here. If we have a dipole over here, we have a positive end over here, and we have a negative end over here. This is a permanent dipole, and this does not have. If we have a polar molecule and a non-polar molecule. In polar molecule, we have positive and negative centers already present in the molecule. And in case of a non-polar substance, we don't have the positive and negative centers separated from each other. In fact, they coincide with each other. Now, if the positive and the negative centers, now in presence of this, what happens? We have the creation of a dipole, induced dipole rather. We will have negative over here, we will have positive over here. Now this induction occurs in presence of a permanent dipole, right? Now greater is the ease, or greater is the compatibility, or greater is the simplicity in the formation of opposite positive and negative centers, or we can say greater is the asymmetrical distribution of charge, or greater is the ease of separation of positive and negative centers, greater will be the polarizability. This is called polarization. That means here we don't have the polar ends present in the molecule. The positive and the negative centers, they coincide with each other. Now, in presence of the field of this polar substance, there occurs polarization. What we mean by polarization? Separation of positive and negative centers of a non-polar substance. What this polarization brings? It brings about the formation of an induced dipole. So greater is the ease, or superior is the process of polarization, stronger will be the forces of attraction between the two. ये जितनी जल्दी होगा उतने ज़्यादा interactions यहाँ पे ज़्यादा strong होंगी. Now we can say this ease of formation of separate positive and negative centers, this is called polarizability. So greater the polarizability, through the process of polarization, stronger will be the forces of attraction between a polar and a non-polar substance, right? We have discussed it already. So we can say in terms of characteristics, these dipole-induced dipole interactions, they fall off with the 6th power of the distance. Then we have the variation with polarizability, or we can say that they have a direct relationship. Remember, this polarizability criteria must be binded, or it's bound to what? It's bound to a non-polar substance. It's meant, or its definition is attached to that of non-polar substance, because we are bringing about the distortion of non-polar substance in presence of a polar substance. Greater the distortion or greater the asymmetrical distribution of charge, greater will be the polarizability, right? So in short, we can say what type of relationship these type of forces do hold with polarizability. There is a direct relationship. So we can say interactions over here, interactions or attractive energy, it's directly proportional to polarizability of non-polar substance, right? So greater the polarizability, greater the distortion, greater the separation of positive and negative centers, greater the separation, greater the chances of formation of induced dipole, greater the chances of formation of induced dipole, greater will be the lifetime of induced dipole, greater the lifetime of the induced dipole, stronger will be the forces of attraction rather between dipole and induced dipole, right? So finally we will illustrate it with the help of a so we will study finally the consequences, right? Finally we have the consequences. In consequences we will take an example, and that will wind up what? Van der Waals type of forces. So now we have consequences. In consequences we have increased solubility of noble gases in polar solvents, right? For example, water, ethanol, C2H5OH, etc., right? Now for example, if I have helium, we have argon, after helium we have neon, helium, then we have helium के बाद है neon, argon, krypton, xenon. I'll leave aside radon because it's radioactive, right? Also we can also take radon, right? So we have in all 6 noble gases over here. Once we move from helium to radon, there is increase in size. ठीक है ना? Increase in size. So the size of helium will be smaller and the size of radon will be higher. What does that indicate? That indicates once the size is higher, it means the outermost electrons will be far away in case of radon as compared to that of its preceding elements, be it helium, neon, argon, krypton or xenon. Once the outermost electrons, for example, if we have helium over here, this is its nucleus, right? And here are the 2 electrons, because its atomic number is 2. Now if we take, for example, this is helium, then we have neon. In neon we have atomic number 10. So how many electrons? It has 10 electrons. 1s2, 2s2, 2p, 6. 1s, 2s, 2p, right? That means in this we have electrons present in the first shell. In this we have the electrons present in the first shell and the second shell as well, right? So in this we have present electrons in the first shell and the second shell. In argon we will have electrons present in the third shell. In this we will have the electrons present in the subshell of fourth shell, and fifth shell will be occupied in case of helium, and sixth shell will be occupied in case of radon. We know that each shell has subshell and subshells contain orbitals. So once we have increase in the number of shells and consequent subshells and number of orbitals, there will be increased distance between the nucleus and the outermost electrons. So once the outermost electrons they get far away from the influence of the nucleus, what happens that attractive power of nucleus to the outermost electrons, it falls off. Once it falls off, that means outermost electrons will not be bound strongly to the nucleus. That means nucleus will not attract the outermost electrons much strongly as compared if we take the example of neon and that of helium. In case of helium, the outermost electrons, since they are present close to the nucleus, they will be strongly held. Now in case of neon, the outermost electrons are slightly away from the nucleus, so the influence of the nucleus on the outermost electrons, it will be less. As a result, the electrons will be less strongly attracted over here as compared to that of here. So what happens? The outermost electrons can be dragged out, or they can be pulled aside much easily as in the case of this neon as compared to that of helium. Now if we move to radon, the outermost electrons will be far away from nucleus. Once they are far away from nucleus, what does that indicate? If we have a polar substance, now in presence of a dipole, permanent dipole, which has a positive and negative end separated from each other. Now if we this polar substance, if we bring a polar substance like this, if we have a polar substance which has a positive and a negative end, right, present permanently in it. So if we bring this polar molecule in the vicinity of these array of atoms of in vicinity of samples of these noble gases, where will be the distortion maximum? The distortion will be obviously maximum in case of radon. Why? Because this positive end will attract the outermost electrons much easily in case of radon, because the outermost electrons in radon will be less tightly held as compared to that of helium. So greater the distortion in case of radon. What does that indicate? That means greater polarizability of what? Radon as compared to that of helium. In case of helium, the outermost electrons will be strongly held. So once they are strongly held, this dipole will not exert much influence on the helium atoms as compared to that of radon atoms. In case of radon atoms, the outermost electrons will be loosely held. Once they are loosely held, this dipole exerts less force, or it will have to spend less energy in order to bring about the distortion of radon atoms. That means induced dipoles will be created much easily over here, with much ease over here as compared to that of helium atoms. Once they are created with much ease, we can say that it has greater polarizability. Once it has greater polarizability, that means radon sample will be readily soluble in case of a polar solvent as compared to that of helium, because greater polarization occurs in case of radon atoms. Once greater polarization occurs, it means they will readily form dipoles, induced dipoles rather. Once they readily form induced dipoles, they will undergo stronger interactions with polar substances, and it will lead to increased solubility of what? These radon atoms. So we can say simply, increase in size leads to increase in solubility. Increase in solubility. So if we have, for example, if in the examination, so as I already told you that this topic is not much of importance as far as the competitive section is concerned. However, even if the questions are being asked, they might be asked from hydrogen bonding, they might be asked from these type of dipole-dipole interactions. Now, for example, if we have now a question of this very type, which of the following is most soluble in say ethanol, C2H5OH, and the options are neon, helium, krypton, D xenon. So first of all, you have to look at the size. Greater the size, greater the distortion, greater the distortion, greater the polarization, greater the polarization, greater the chances of formation of induced dipole in these non-polar substances. This is a polar solvent, these are non-polar samples, right? So which of these will be most soluble in alcohol molecule? Alcohol is a polar molecule. So if we have, first of all, in order to look for the answer, we have to look at the size. Helium is followed by neon, is followed by argon, since argon is not over here, then we have krypton, and then we have xenon. Now among these four, it's the xenon which has the maximum size. So since increase in size leads to increase in solubility, so the correct option is xenon, right? So this is all about what? This is dipole induced dipole interactions. Now after this we have the most important topic, and this that has to be dealt in detail regarding its consequences, regarding the type of forces, regarding the type of molecules which they possess, and regarding its impact is very much important as far as the competitive exam is also concerned, because it might be asked in the competitive exams, but in this theoretical or academic exams it's also appreciable importance. And it also comes under van der Waals forces, but it's studied separately, and it's simply hydrogen bonding. You might have heard the word hydrogen bonding. So it's most conveniently it's studied under van der Waals forces as a type of van der Waals force. So we can say it's the fourth type of van der Waals forces. Also it should be in certain books it is shown as a separate topic, but we can study it under van der Waals forces as well. So we have hydrogen bonding, right? Hydrogen bonding. Actually it's not actually it's a misnomer. We don't have the formation of any type of bond over here. It's called bonding. It's a misnomer. There is no formation of a chemical bond. Remember this thing. It is a type of van der Waals force. It's a type of van der Waals force. Now since we have studied how many types of van der Waals forces, we have studied London forces, we have studied dipole-dipole interactions, then we have studied induced dipole interactions. Now it's a type of van der Waals forces, and which type it corresponds to? It's a type of actually dipole-dipole interactions. Dipole-dipole interactions हमने पढ़ा है, ठीक है ना? If we take, whenever we have hydrogen bonded to three most electronegative elements in the periodic table, whenever we have hydrogen bonded to nitrogen, we have bonded hydrogen to fluorine, we have hydrogen bonded to oxygen directly. Whenever we have hydrogen bonded to these elements directly, those compounds, they show hydrogen bonding, or they show dipole-dipole type of interactions. Now we will take example. If we take the example of, say, ammonia, NH3, alright, here we have hydrogens bonded directly to nitrogen. Similarly, HF, only molecule having hydrogen bonded to fluorine. Similarly, if we have water, hydrogen directly bonded to oxygen, hydrogen directly bonded to fluorine, hydrogen directly bonded to nitrogen. All these compounds which have hydrogen directly bonded to fluorine, oxygen or nitrogen, all those compounds which have nitrogen, fluorine and oxygen combined directly or bonded chemically to hydrogen, they show a phenomenon of hydrogen bonding. Now if we take all the three samples over here, nitrogen is more electronegative than hydrogen, fluorine is more electronegative than hydrogen, oxygen is also more electronegative than that of hydrogen. क्या हुआ इनको यार? Because of the electronegativity difference, these bonds will be polar in nature. Rest we will see tomorrow. Somebody has an emergency over here, so I will attend him first. Rest of the topic will be that tomorrow.